Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Tompsett along with my partner in crime Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
I'm feeling pretty good now, especially now that football season's officially over and we can officially get in here to the actual off season. I feel like, now it's starting to feel real that we're in the off season. Football's past us. Although one point I want to make is, did you see the Rams celebration today? And their sparse fans was less than if I let my hair grow out, it would look more full than their parade looked today.
It wasn't great. I will say I always have a weird melancholy on the day of the other team's championship parade when I see the players celebrating, the coaches celebrating. I'll watch some of the announcement things and everything like that, and that's always the real finality for me to hear, like, and that you see the one picture where it's Aaron Donald, who didn't wear a shirt the entire day. If I was Aaron Donald, I wouldn't own a shirt. You had Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, and Les Snead, and Les Snead wearing the picture of where they did like his face with the Jordan meme and just F those pics on his shirt, and the three of them trashed in the picture hugging each other. And like that one really hit home where it's like, oh, I want that. I want to see that. And seeing it, and the parade route wasn't pretty throughout LA, but once they got everyone together around the Coliseum, it was pretty cool to see. But that really is kind of the final nail in the coffin for the 2021 season, and that's really what we've been doing here is kind of getting you guys ready. Last week we went through kind of our last step of grading things out for the year, where we had existing players who we thought we could win with, who you can win because of. We then had an awesome salary cap spectacular on Friday night, going through every single contract on the roster. And we've kind of given you guys updates on all the news pieces here and there, all the coaches that have been hired, the impact of those. Make sure you guys are watching the film room and the other shows that are breaking down the impact of each of those. We've had some really good work on that. And tonight's show, we're going to do one last piece here on the Bills side of things with all of our pending free agents. Who we think each of them, are they going to walk? Are we going to re-sign? Are we going to tender the restricted free agents? Each of the pieces like that. What is our approach to how we're going to do that? And we'll go through each one as we have it here. But, Aaron, what are your kind of final thoughts as you see those Super Bowl parades and the different things going on and what that means for this time of year?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I agree with Les Snead's shirt more and more these days about first-round picks. I think we as fans think they are maybe more valuable than they are, especially when you're as good as, say, the Rams are. Look, the Detroit Lions are going to get the 32nd pick. I saw your tweet. Somebody saying it's finally happened. The Detroit Lions have got it.
And that was a Packers writer who I follow that wrote, "I can't believe it. It finally happened. The Detroit Lions have the 32nd pick in the draft."
And so if you're everyone makes fun of these Rams. And I do think, you make a great point that eventually this cap stuff, this stuff comes up to get you. But right now, not that they're the case study to say, hey, just disregard all this stuff because, look, you can win a Super Bowl. I'm not going to see that far. But to be competitive in this league now, the NFL is getting a little bit more like the NBA, where you do have to go a little bit all in. You have to kind of go and get as many stars as you can and get as many assets as you can to make a good run when you have the opportunity to. And if it's giving away a future first-round pick and knowing that first-round pick is going to be 30th, 31st, 32nd, like that doesn't
Or your worst case scenario, like this year, 25th.
25th.
That's about as bad as it's going to get.
Yeah, and while the Bills will be able to add a nice player at 25, if it's the difference of getting a Danielle Hunter, a premier edge rusher type player, or somebody that can really impact a quarterback or really get you over the hump offensively, then you know what, man, I don't know. I think I'm willing to do it. So that's one lesson I've learned a little bit from this year, that hey, we make fun of Les Snead for all that stuff, but maybe the guy's not as crazy as we think. And then, sort of the last thing is that this Bills team is really close. I think, GMFB, I saw a clip today of Peter Schrager talking about how maybe Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the AFC because he got his team to the Super Bowl. And it got me thinking, though, like, I really do think the Bills are the best football team in the NFL this year. Right? The Bill Simmons, I think, put that out this week on his podcast, saying he thought the Buffalo Bills were the best team, even though they didn't get to the Super Bowl.
Him and Cousin Sal, they talked through and went and talked about the fact of, he was doing it almost twisting the knife a little bit of like, hey, sure. The Bills fans got to be frustrated because you're walking away knowing you had the best team, and like saying it very declaratively. And there's been a couple others that have thrown it. Warren Sharp did the same thing when they had asked Warren Sharp, like, oh, does this, do people overdo it when they do the case studies of, okay, what do we got to do to be like the two teams that were in the Super Bowl? And he said, one, you don't, because those weren't the two best teams in football. No. The two best teams in football were the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Correct.
And that, the other teams were the fourth best teams, and that was probably about accurate. That those two teams were probably like the seventh or eighth best teams in the league. They just went on a good run at the right time. Yes. And that's your point about the Rams was the one other piece I want to mention. People are now bringing it up as, oh, that's how you get to the Super Bowl, and it's not. They made some aggressive, calculated risks that paid off. And in our group chat, I made the joke about, it's like the guy you see in the casino that had a good night playing games, and then at the end of the night put all his chips down on black and roulette and wins. Like, that's cool, but that's not good process. Like, that doesn't mean it's sustainable. They made a lot of gambles that might not have turned out the way that they did, and would have looked really dumb if they didn't.
Yeah, if they get bounced 2 rounds earlier, which they were in close games.
Very close.
They're in some close games there. If they get bounced early, it looks a lot worse. And they're having a lot of different conversations in LA about the future of that team, right? And there was already kind of conversations of, is McVay going to come back? Is Aaron Donald going to come back? Well, I'll tell you, those conversations get worse if they don't win. So for sure, it's not a path to winning. I do think the path is still what the Bills have been able to build, what Kansas City's got going on. I think that more times than not, that's the kind of
how the Packers have approached it.
Yeah, this is the beauty of the NFL, and sort of the hard part of being a fan of the NFL is if you could have the best team in the league, but because it's one and done, and there's any given Sunday is a real thing, that if you don't show up every single week or for 13 seconds in a game, like, that's it, your season's done, and you don't get a 7-game series. It's not like these other sports where you can have a bad game or a lapse and make up for it down the road. That's it, you're done. So those are kind of the things that, on my sign back here for those that aren't watching, it's run it back. And I don't necessarily mean, we'll talk about these pending free agents, and a lot of them I'd like to bring back, and it's not necessarily bring all those guys back, but I don't know that they need to make some home run move here to really move the needle. I still think that this was the best team in football, and as long as Brandon Beane's able to fill some of these holes and maybe draft well and bring guys in for the future and continue to have this type of success that they've had, they're gonna hit that Super Bowl window here soon.
Yeah, and it's there's a lot of things that'll come up, and there's a lot of comments in the chat. You always engage with everybody, and having a great chat every show. There'll be a lot of things that come up about Josh Allen's contract, and this is the last year that we have before his numbers get crazy, and that's accurate. That is a factual. His numbers do go up. I got to warn people, his numbers jump up by about the same amount that the salary cap's going to jump up. So when people say, I get frustrated with people throwing, oh, this is the best team they're ever going to have around him. Be like, well, we can have basically the same team as what we've had. There'll be different expenditures in different areas. And yes, if you want to consider the amount that the cap jumps by is going to be soaked up by Josh Allen's increase in his contract. Yes, that's accurate. But that means the same type of team we've built around him now, you can still continue to have that chunk of same money for them. It's because Josh is soaking up the amount that the cap's going up. So that was maybe an opportunity to sign somebody else that another team might have, but we still have a really talented team. We can keep having a really talented team around him.
To that point, and you'll know more about this than I will, but I mean, Patrick Mahomes is already in there, right? Like he was ahead of Josh with a record-setting contract, and he was already in there. And Kansas City Chiefs, from everything I've heard, are just going to kind of restructure him as they go and move that money around, kick him some bonus money, move some stuff around. And I'm assuming that Brandon Beane's already got a lot of stuff built in, knowing where the cap's going, knowing where his team is and where the other contracts are going to be. That, and he's an easy one. We talk about those restructures where it's guys you want to keep long term. Like, I think they'll be happy to make some restructures here over the next couple of years, and then in a couple of years again extend them even further and push that money around. Like, that's the cap's not a myth, but all this stuff is malleable. Like, it really is.
Not every year. Yeah,
sure.
They're, and just like the Chiefs, they're not going to kick the can down
every
the road
single year,
every year, because once you do it once, you kick little chunks of that into the next 4 seasons.
Sure.
And then the next year, you've already got one of those little chunks. So if you do it again, now you get 2 chunks in that year. And if you do it again, now you got 3 chunks. And then all of a sudden, even if you do it, you're already paying for the 4/5 of the contract. So there's diminishing returns if you leverage it every single season. But the Bills built Josh Allen's contract the same kind of way that Patrick Mahomes was done with the Chiefs, where they have large bonuses every year that the team will get to choose. Do we pay it out as a roster bonus right then and take all the money in that year, or do we convert it into a signing bonus and spread it out over 5 years? And they'll have those options as we go.
Yep.
But along those lines, we'll get into it here. Before we get into free agency, we've kind of structured the show leading you guys up to free agency. And a lot of it, we want to be smart about it because we've done this in the past. People go way overboard with mock drafts right now where we don't know who's going to be re-signed, and free agent wish lists before we know who's going to be re-signed. And a lot of it we missed on last year. People were saying, hey, there's no way we can re-sign Darrell Williams and Matt Milano and bringing all these guys back, and they still figured out ways to do it.
Or remember 2 years ago when we were like, there's no way they're going to be able to revamp an entire offensive line in a single offseason, and then he did it.
Yeah. All of a sudden, all those mock drafts, picking tackles the year before, picking offensive linemen, or picking linebackers this past year, it's all moot. So we want to go through and talk through each of the pending free agents that are coming up before we get into free agency. And there's 17 of them. There's 17 players on the Bills roster that are pending free agents and have the choice of, we're going to let them walk, we're going to re-sign them and give you a projection of how much, or we're going to tender free agents, or maybe re-sign if it's for this amount. Or if we decide to let them walk for a few of the positions, maybe throw out some names of guys we would consider in that same ballpark. We're not going to go wish list shopping of saying, oh, if we let Mario Addison walk, why don't we go sign Chandler Jones? That's not the kind of shopping that we're talking about. We're going to give options of guys who are in the same ballpark and the same relative tier as those costs. And then we'll see where that leaves us here at the end of the show. So if anybody missed the salary cap spectacular on Friday night, we went through, and with re-signing a bunch of people and doing some different pieces, we can pretty easily get to a full roster, no big holes, and about 10 million in cap space. Plus, we talked about 20 million more in restructures we could do and different coupons you could use if you want to get to that point. So the Bills could have anywhere from, say, 25 to 30 million without getting crazy to be able to go through.
I thought your tweet earlier, there's a thread and somebody's talking about bringing in an expensive edge, and you're like, it's not that we can't, it's, what do you say? It's physically capable or physically possible, but
it was actually our man GC, who's awesome. He was always great interacting with us, and he had phrased it and looked and said, I think that adding a guy like that would be what was the word he used? I gotta find it now. It had said that it would be very realistic, and I said, well, I don't know if I would use the word realistic, but I would say it's technically possible. That there are pieces where I think we could, but I just don't know if we're going to convert things in that way to be
able to buy an 86-inch TV this week.
It's technically possible,
but I shouldn't.
It's technically possible.
I didn't win any fantasy leagues this year, so I shouldn't do that.
Well, see, that's how what you got to use it for. So it's I'm not going to project anything. I don't think anything over $10 million is realistic. I don't think that's realistic. It's possible we can make those things work, and we'll talk about it tonight. Some of the guys, I think we're going to do some $6 million shopping.
Sure.
I think we're going to do a couple in that area. I don't think we're going to do any big, huge splurges. And
I think there might be some guys here that we're hoping to get for 6 that might end up getting 10 somewhere else.
Yeah, that's very
too.
true. There's a lot of guys that I'm kind of hoping that, well, if you can't find that, and you'll
Right.
hear this from me a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to put together groups and tiers of guys, especially at a couple different positions, cornerback, defensive tackle, and edge, where we're going to throw out a number and be like, hey, here's 6 of you guys. 5 of you are probably going to get more money than this, but one of you probably isn't. And whichever one of you doesn't, come on back and take our $5 million contract.
But before we get into this, one of the things that is really sort of new for us as Bills fans and fun is that when you have these types of situations, and this is one of the reasons why types of free agents I'm looking at are, younger guys who don't quite have the production yet where they're going to get huge interest from teams and be a key cornerstone free agent for a team, or older guys that have already been made some money in this league and are in that 32 to 34-year-old range where, hey, there's some production still left in you.
Yeah.
Want to come chase a ring for $3-4 million less?
Exactly what we were trying with Emmanuel Sanders.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Kind of and the Bills are in that ballpark now. And there's maybe 5 teams that can get discount deals in the NFL at the shot of being in the running for a ring. And the Bills are one of those teams.
Yeah, which is really fun. That's a fun way to do it. So without further ado, we're going to go in reverse order. We're going to get to the more exciting names towards the bottom, but we're going to work our way down to that. And we did some positional tiering so that way we can go over the position groups as we go. So we will start with the most exciting one. The only pending offensive tackle free agent. Aaron, what are you doing with Bobby Hart?
Thanks for nothing. I want to say thanks for your service, but no.
Best of luck.
There's a real chance that the Bills end up with him some point again on the roster this summer in camp as a camp body. But at this point, it's not hey, let's get this guy back in the building immediately in free agency. It's let him walk. And then if we need some bodies in the summer, I could see Bobby Hart coming back and Twitter melting.
Twitter will melt down, and I will make the point of, hey, he's brought back to build the confidence of the young pass rushers so they feel better about themselves in practice.
And to simulate pressures on Josh.
As they beat him like a turnstile. So the next group are, I'm going to say running backs because there's technically 2 running backs, but I'm going to lump together a running back and a safety even. We'll start with Matt Breida, and then we'll get to Tywan Jones and Seren Neal. So Matt Breida, last year was a guy that both of us were kind of cautiously optimistic about, and then saw some of the flashes when you and I were sitting there in the stands during the Packers preseason game. And then all of a sudden it just never materialized. There never was that moment. And then you had the season finish with Devin Singletary. So I don't even know if Matt Breida is an invite back. I think I would even if they did a minimum contract, I'd rather see them go another direction than Breida. I now have seen enough of hoping he, in fantasy, I thought maybe he would work out in Miami. Then he gets to Buffalo, and there were opportunities. There were chances that we gave him when neither running back Moss or Singletary were doing anything, and he never could grab it. I'm good. I'm okay if he walks.
Yeah, I'm pretty disappointed that we didn't get anything out of him, because really the Bills are in need of a third running option, right? It's Devin Singletary and Josh Allen until Zach Moss does. I don't think Zach Moss is going anywhere. He'll be part of this team going forward, but they need a consistent third option. And I was hoping Breida would be that, because when he was signed, it was that home run speed, right? We talked about that home run speed. It was something different. And I don't know if I'm not necessarily sold on, hey, this Bills team just needs speed to get over the hump. I don't know that that's true. I would take a guy that's power, short yardage back. I would take a speed guy, pass catching primarily back, like any of those types of backs. I just need somebody that when you are in, you're consistently productive. And that's what we didn't see out of Matt Breida this year. Lacked vision, just wasn't the guy that we thought he could be. And I guess the writing was a little bit on the walls before he got here, that there was many opportunities for him, and just he was never able to take any of them and run with them.
Everybody saw that one moment he had in San Francisco and wondered, hey, can we recapture
we capture that moment? Yeah. And so I would warn people maybe with Mostert in free agency to be a little bit concerned if you like that type of speed and
similar
getting out of a Shanahan system. And I don't know if you can replicate that everywhere. So But I think there's enough guys in free agency that you can bring in a probably similar cost or something close, or running backs late round. This is another position we were talking off air, how wide receivers are impacting these veteran low end roster guys. Running backs, another one of these positions that you can draft guys in the third, fourth, fifth round, and it replaces that value. And you love controlled costs. You get them on rookie controlled costs. So
look at
for
what
me,
Chuba Hubbard did when he stepped in for Christian McCaffrey, and Chuba Hubbard wasn't any kind of crazy investment, but was able to step in, and all of a sudden, he was a reasonably productive player.
Yeah, and so that's all you need is somebody that, hey, if Singletary gets injured and Zach Moss still is not the guy, you need somebody that can be reasonably productive, like you said. And Matt Breida is not it, so he's on the way out.
Who are a couple names that you would consider maybe a notch more investment than Matt Breida? Who are some guys that you would like?
So on my free agent wish list right now, I have 3 guys that I'd like to bring in here, and they're not going to be sexy. They're not going to be young, hot names. One is James White, who didn't play a ton last year. I've wanted him now for a couple seasons.
Played really well in the first 2 weeks and then got hurt. He's older. He is 30 years old. Yeah.
But he's the pass catching back that they've wanted. He's very much a specialist in that pass catching role. He can be a reliable runner as well. But even in those 2 games, he had 14 targets, 2 catches. That's 85% completion percentage, 94 yards, 7.8 yards of reception. Like, he's still got something in the pass game, and the Bills need that. I would love to see Josh Allen running around and have that check down safety valve of a James White, especially on some of the more 3rd and long type plays, stuff like that. JD McKissick is a guy that I would love. A little faster, a little bit more speed, a little bit younger. So he's 28. He'll be 29 this season. So James White, also 30 years old already. But yeah, they're very similar. Again, he had 51 targets, 43 receptions, similar reception percentage, 397 yards, 9.2 yards of reception. Like, these are nice numbers for a 3rd running back on your team, or a 2nd, 3rd running back, that type of option. And then another guy who I was hoping the Bills might be able to get their hands on last year after the Texans released him, Philip Lindsay, I think is a nice option that could be out there, where a cheap guy who has had some production in the league and could provide you just a consistent, reliable enough running back in a spot of need when you need him.
Yeah. And I'm kind of similar. I've cooled quite a bit on Zach Moss, in that I'm not banking on much there. So I would be fine with one of those kind of true 3rd down backs, but I almost want a more pairing backup to Singletary. So I would keep an eye on guys like Justin Jackson out of the Chargers. They're in a spot where they also have some other names in that backfield, and they may not need, with Eckler back, and they already have a couple other guys that they may not need to bring him back. And the same thing, Darrell Williams, with it seems like the Chiefs kind of really like, they already have Edwards-Helaire, and now they really like Jerick McKinnon. Right. I could see Darrell Williams being available and being a guy that would be there. Both of those, I think, would be in the same range. Maybe they're $2 million instead of veteran minimum, but pretty cheap guys that I'd be totally fine with a James White, Devin Singletary backfield, the Darrell Williams, Devin Singletary backfield, the Justin Jackson, Devin Singletary backfield.
And if you haven't seen the dudes from the film room, Eric, Clay, and Anthony did great in Jackson was on there.
Yes. Yeah.
Running back wish list. So they did a nice little breakdown of Jackson. If you haven't seen much,
they did, I believe, running back, wide receiver, tight end. I think were the 3 that they did.
And a couple of the guys we'll talk about, I think, tonight will have been on there. But it's a great show, worth watching and going through. And I think they're going to continue to run through the positions. But Jackson was one of the guys on that list. And I'm surprised, actually, we haven't seen in the chat any Christian Wade standing going on here and telling us we're idiots and that we already got the guy on our team.
Hey, maybe he's just waiting for his moment to break out now at 31 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So the next one, I'm just going to call special teams guys.
Yep.
So I'm going to put Tywan Jones, Saran Neal, and Jake Kumaro into this group.
Yep.
I kind of Tywan Jones is going to turn 34 during the season. Mm-hmm. He'll enter the year at 33. I kind of think it's time to move on. If he's welcomed back, it needs to be with no signing bonus, no guaranteed money, and just a a shot at a roster spot.
Hey, we're going to respect you and give you an opportunity
Yeah.
for this ring that we didn't get this year.
Correct. And also because last year it wasn't. Last year he was $1.75 million, and it was like a $500,000 signing bonus. He was not in a good position to cut if he didn't make the team in the 53. I don't think they can offer him that. But if he's also been in the league long enough where his veteran minimum is actually pretty good. It's probably like 1.2, 1.3 million, and it counts as the minimum. So I would offer him that. I actually think Saran Neal is now in position to get his deal that he got, the 1.75 million.
That's what I was going to say.
And I'd even go a couple years. I would do like 3 years and 5 million.
Yeah.
I would give him 3 years, 5 million, put him in a spot where he's got some security. He's a bit of a priority for me. And for me, Kumaro would be welcomed back at a veteran minimum and just a chance to try out for the roster.
Yeah.
I don't need Taiwan Jones or Jake Kumaro to leave, but they're welcome back and not for any real money. And then Saran Neal, I would bring back at 1.75.
Yeah. So Saran Neal's probably my second top priority in this pending free agent group for me. I really do think, I think it's the passing of the torch or the, changing of the guard and special teams, and that thanks Taiwan for all that you've done. I was a big stan of his, whoops. I'm seeing that now that I called Kendall Clay. My bad. Sorry, Kendall. Out there,
he did do an awesome job in the film show.
I still associate the two of them in their old show together.
They just spend a lot of time together.
So Saran Neal, though, for me, I think that he is that next Taiwan Jones leader of this special teams unit. I think he is a true special teams ace in the making in this league. The other day I compared him that he could maybe become our Matthew Slater, where he's just constantly getting contracts to be a top special teams guy for this team. And so I don't know that you need multiple. You got Tyler Manikevich, who maybe they're going to rework his deal out. I don't know how many of these guys the Bills need. Although we've been saying that for 3 years, Greg, like how many of these special teams ace type guys do they need? But I do think it's time you can move on from Taiwan Jones and give Saran Neal that role as one of the top.
Yeah, there'll be some areas where we need some of those draft picks to start to be developmental guys that come up and become a draft pick developmental linebacker who also can play special teams, a draft pick developmental safety, corner, whatever it might be. So I think that we'll be in a position to be able to start to develop some of those. But I think people also underestimate how many guys play special team snaps.
Yeah.
Like when they're, how many do you need? Well, literally the answer is 11. Like you need 11 guys on 5 different units to play special teams. Some guys need to play a lot of them, and you need, most teams have 4 or 5 or 6 core special teams guys that play all 4 phases, not counting field goal, extra point. But all the rest of the units, a lot of teams have 4 or 5 or 6 guys who play all those. So maybe we can trim that down to 4 instead of 6.
You're going to have to get it down, and like tight end 2 is going to have to be a big special teams contributor. The 4th wide receiver that they bring in is going to have to be a big special teams contributor. But what I'd like to start to get to is more, you have those maybe 4 to 5 core guys, and that your tight end 2 is also productive as a tight end 2 and a special teams contributor, or a productive member of the wide receiver.
Example.
Who's that?
Reggie Gilliam is a perfect example where he contributes legitimately when needed. And that's the difference between I like Reggie Gilliam's more than I like Tyler Medikevich's.
Yeah.
Reggie Gilliam is realistically a core special teams player, but when he's asked to play fullback, tight end, H-back, he does so at a sufficient starting NFL caliber level. He can play starting fullback and can catch the ball and can block and can go out and pass routes and do all those things. That's good usage. I'll even say Jake Kumero's close. Like Jake Kumero is more functional as a wide receiver than I think Matakevich is as a linebacker.
Sure. Or Taiwan Jones was as a running back.
Correct. Yeah. Jones has kind of gone past that point now, but at one point he was actually a functional running back and returner. He actually that was when Taiwan Jones was his most valuable.
Yep.
He had stretches where he was an all-pro kick returner and gunner.
His Vegas when they were Oakland
Yeah,
still days.
he had some stretches there where he was an ace across the board.
Yeah.
So all right, that covers where we're at here. So now we've allowed Bobby Hart to move on, Matt Breida to move on. 3 guys here where we would welcome back Tywan Jones at a minimum, no guaranteed money, and he may not make the roster. Jake Kumaro, veteran minimum, no guaranteed money, may not make the roster. Saran Neal, probably a little bit of money over the minimum, but not too much, about 1.75, and we put it at about a 3-year, $5 million deal.
And a special teams captain.
Yeah, honestly,
on his chest.
Honestly, maybe. Yeah, I think he's to that point where he might be one of the captains for it. Next is an interesting spot. What are we doing with Mitch Trubisky in the backup quarterback spot?
Yeah, this one to me is musical chairs. However, musical chairs settles of the 7.
Whoever
top.
the loser is this year.
Honestly, it really is. I don't know that there's a huge difference between your Mitch Trubisky's and your Andy Daltons and your who they put some guy, Jacoby Brissett's even. I think it's on the bottom of that.
He's probably
tier.
my cutoff line.
Yeah, I think he's at that bottom of the tier. Ryan Fitzpatrick's, if he's still coming back. I think we mentioned a bunch of those names in
Marcus
the last
Mariota,
show.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, any of those guys. See how it shakes out in free agency. Mitch, you're lucky. Go take a look, see if anything's out there for you.
See if the Giants will give you some money to compete and be a safety
bless
net
you.
behind Daniel Jones.
Absolutely, God bless you. Good luck. Yeah, and then wherever it settles, hey, if you want to come and do what Mitch did last year here, we're happy to give you that same type of thing, and you can come be a good backup quarterback. We mentioned in the salary cap show too, like even if Mitch Trubisky had to play meaningful snaps this year, like the Bills were pretty screwed, even though they had a good backup quarterback situation. You can win games with a guy like that, but none of these guys are going to win football games for you. So even if you're down to that backup, you're pretty screwed anyway. So I'm not going to invest a ton of money, but I'm happy to give guys a platform to come be part of a Super Bowl caliber organization, maybe get some reps if Josh gets hurt, or just be good enough to be here and then go on and find your contract, your next deal.
Yeah, well, and I'll say there's a discussion in the chat. I think that there is a tier there where I think we went from Matt Barkley to Mitch Trubisky. Matt Barkley, there was a coin flip if you could even function like that. The last games where he played, they lost that.
Although that Jets game, he was lights out.
Well, 3 years ago there, the final game of the year, he was the reason that they lost, and Sam Darnold technically had a win with the Jets against the Bills in that game. And it was that kind of thing where when Trubisky played, you felt like we had a 50-50 shot, like a legit shot to win. He could function. If it was an extended period of time, or God forbid in the playoffs, it was going to be a problem. Right. So that's where you get into, it's okay to pay more than the veteran minimum, and it's okay to have better than some of these other guys you see rolled out there that are just terrible, Kyle Allens and people like that are just not functional to be able to do that. But we just can't afford to spend a lot of money on it. So out of that list, there's honestly 10 guys that you go through with Fitzpatrick and Dalton and Mariota and
Tyrod's on that list.
Tyrod, Jameis Winston, Mitch Trubisky still. All those guys. Someone is not going to get Jacoby Brissett. Someone is not going to get the shot to compete that they hope for. And we're going to just have a thing, and you're going to hear this over and over again. I'm going to do this at other positions. We are going to have an offer dangling there at backup quarterback, $2.5 million. Whenever one of you guys are ready, come on over. We got it ready for you. That's our number. We're willing to pay one of you. We've got $2.5 million. Come on over.
Ken Dorsey and Joe Brady.
Yeah, great situation.
Be with Josh Allen, and this is a great situation for a guy that's a backup. So I think it's a great situation for that. But I don't want to get into the spot where they're paying the Chase Daniels type of top backup money for a guy.
The Browns were paying Case Keenum like $6 to $8 million a year. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, that's because he was as good as their starter. So.
Well, that does make a big difference. This sounds like Anthony Romeo. So I will say my just sneaky one. I don't know why I have a feeling about it. My guy is Mariota. I think that if there's anybody there who's going to take the Trubisky route of, hey, maybe if I take this 1 year to go get myself ready in this good system, and if Josh goes down, I'd be set up to look good if I play, and then go out and try one more time for a spot, I could see that. Whereas Dalton, Fitzpatrick, Tyrod, those guys know what's up. Those guys know, hey, we're not getting another chance here.
Right.
This is I'm just coming in as a backup. So that's my one thing, that like my parallel to Trubisky, where it was really a 1-year stopover with the idea of, hey, maybe I could cash in one more time. My guy for that is Marcus Mariota. I'm going to guess that's who I think could follow that same path.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. I think that this is it for him.
Yes.
Like that. I don't know.
He's for sure going to try to get a spot with one of these rookies, or San Francisco moves on from Garoppolo and he's like, hey, I'll be the guy to be your safety net if, your young kid isn't ready, and that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
So the next spot here is 2 offensive guards, Ike Boettger and Ryan Bates. Ryan Bates is super easy. He is a restricted free agent. We are just like Ike Boettger was last year. The restricted free agent tender is $2.43 million. I think Ryan Bates played too well at the end of the year to roll the dice, and because as an example, the Bills had 3 restricted free agents last year. Right. They had Levi Wallace, Isaiah McKenzie, and Ike Boettger. They only tendered Ike Boettger, the offensive lineman. They rolled the dice on Levi Wallace and Isaiah McKenzie, and then brought them both back at less than half of what the restricted free agent tender number was. I think that Ike Boettger is the example. I don't think they're going to mess around with that. I think they're going to tender Ryan Bates. I think Ike Boettger, unfortunately, with the timing of his Achilles, I would guess that they keep him on the roster and that they bring him back, and he might be one of those guys you could kind of hide on the PUP list, and then bring back if he's ready. And you might have end of the season, you might have some good versatile depth. Do you feel different about Boettger or Bates?
No, I think for me, they're both priorities to keep on this roster. I think
Bates for sure.
Bates, absolutely. And I do think Boettger played better than people want to give him credit for. I think he was at least at the same level of a John Feliciano, if not better.
They were always flip-flop. He was the better pass blocker. Feliciano was the better run blocker, and I care more about pass blocking.
Yeah, I do too. I want to keep Josh. I mean, Brandon Bean just said that on a podcast. And he's talking about like one of the priorities is how do we keep Josh protected. And so if your depth guard is a decent pass blocker and has proven production in that, happy to get him back in here. So both those guys are guys I want back. And the timing of that injury for Boettger, I'll be interested to see how that goes throughout the offseason for him. But I agree, he'll probably be a
Achilles timelines are goofy, and I'll say Daniel's probably right, but I also just watched Cam Akers tear his Achilles in training camp and then play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
not well, but he played.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to go on, but I agree. My instinct is that I don't know if he's going to be ready for the beginning of
I want him
2022 season
in the Buffalo Bills possession.
Agreed.
Going forward, whether or not he plays this year, late in the year or not. But I agree. Bates deserves it. This whole offensive line, I'm team run this back, this offensive line, if you can. If you can get, we talked about in the cap special, if you can get Darryl Williams to take a pay cut,
a little bit of a haircut.
Yeah, do it a little bit, and let's run this offensive line back with Aaron Cromer and see what we can do.
Yeah, couple quick things for questions in the chat. As Aaron just said, I agree. I think Ryan Bates is the opening training camp starter. Doesn't mean somebody can't beat him out, but I think he earned the first reps at left guard going into camp, and I think he played well enough that it's not a priority to go sign some other free agent. I think they feel pretty good that, hey, we're probably
or make that your first round pick, right?
Correct. You don't. Yeah, you now don't need it. It doesn't have to be an interior lineman with your first round pick. I know Pop Smuffy was talking about he deserves a raise. He does. Unfortunately, when you're a restricted free agent, you just don't have to do that. So they will wait, and they can do that the next year. Not that it's not impossible. They could agree on an extension, but at $2.4 million, it's going to be really hard to beat that. Yeah. They're probably going to keep that control, and we do get excited easy. It was 5 games. They were good. It was 5 good games. Yeah. We need to see a whole season, and then he'll earn himself a nice contract. It will give him $5 or $6 million a year, whatever it is, to go forward. Yeah. And Ron asking here, unfortunately, Ryan Bates was an undrafted free agent. So the original round tender is UDFA, which is nothing.
You get all those you want.
We would get right of first refusal. So that's how restricted free agency works. We put the original round tender on him, which doesn't get us anything, unfortunately. But if somebody else offered him a contract, we could just match it and then keep him. So,
which I wouldn't even want to play around with having to match. Somebody will offer him off those 5 games pretty decently.
They could. Well, I mean, that's how restricted free agency works.
Yeah.
So when we tender him, he can get offers from other teams. So the only way to stop that is to sign him to an extension. So my guess is, and I will say very, very few restricted free agents get offers because you're going to spend all that time negotiating.
And if you're looking for a guard,
team can just go, all right, we'll match that. Thanks for doing the work.
And if you're looking for a guard, there's quite a few guards on the market that, if you want to overpay for one, there's plenty to.
Yeah. So a couple just clarification on Bates. Ron was right. We traded for him from Philly, but God bless Philly. They got Eli Harold, so it didn't matter. But Philly traded a UDFA, a guy that they just signed as a UDFA and didn't even draft, and traded him that training camp of his UDFA season. That's impressive for Howie Roseman.
Then didn't they take Jack Anderson from a draft pick from
next
us
year?
for nothing?
Yeah, then they claimed Jack Anderson. I mean, Bates was 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it was for Eli Harold, who we were going to cut. So it didn't matter.
Eli Harold,
straight up. It was Ryan Bates for Eli Harold was the trade. So we'll see what's there. I don't think Ron's wrong in your instinct of it wouldn't be terrible to extend him, but only if it's pretty close to that $2.4 million number. And if I'm him, I don't want that. If I'm him, I'm like, hey, fine,
gamble
like,
yourself.
Tender me. I'll play good for a whole season, and then you got to pay me $5, $6, $7 million. So,
right.
Now, if he agrees to that, it's great. Like I'll celebrate it, but he'd be crazy. So if that happens, Ryan Bates, come find me. I'll be your agent from now on. Because if your agent agrees to an extension of $2.4 million, he's a bad agent.
Right.
So we'll see.
You've waited.
I'll represent him if he agrees to that.
As a player, you've waited this long to have the opportunity to put yourself on display to get a good contract. I don't know. Like, why would you take less when you have that one opportunity to go get yourself some money? Yeah. That would be silly.
Yeah. And Amy, I can't help it. I'd love to stop talking with my hands, but they just move when I start talking. My hands move.
He's part Italian. He's got
it's where it goes. So the next one, I'll let you lead off here. We have 3 defensive ends that are coming up here: Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, F.A. Obata. Walk, resign. What's your number? What are you doing? Start where you want.
This one's tough for me, guys, because the more I look into edge, the more I keep coming back to Jerry Hughes. I really do. There's not a lot. The problem for the Bills right now, as we talked about it a little bit when we opened up here, is they're not going to spend $15 million on a free agent. So if you're not going to do that and get one of the higher end free agent edges, you're in the same realm.
I love Chandler Jones, but we're
for sure. Absolutely. Or Von Millers of the world, Hassan Reddick
would be great.
I just don't think the money's going to be there. I don't think that Brandon Beane's going to put that much into one position when there's so many holes that are going to be here this free agency. So once you get past that level, it's really the Jerry Hughes of the world. And to be honest, guys, like
other guys like him.
Sacks, I know, are a problem with a Jerry Hughes. The last few years, he's not gotten the sack production, but when you compare him to Hassan Reddick's and some of these other guys, pressures wise, he's really right there in the pack. And I do believe, and you can argue with me on Twitter about it, I do believe pressures matter. And I think that it impacts quarterbacks. And, Joe Marino, we were talking about that tweet that he put out with Lockdown Bills about, hey, teams that get to the Super Bowl or passing, you got to learn how to stop the pass and how to pass and anything, when you're signing free agents, how do they impact the passing game? Well, he also is a guy that talks about pressure splits between quarterbacks and how they perform with pressure versus against it. And a lot of people in my mentions are saying, well, Mahomes, he's elite and he has like a 40% completion percentage under pressure. What people are thinking about is you don't blitz Patrick Mahomes. He's great against the blitz.
Yeah.
But if
he can get away from it without getting pressured.
Correct. Yeah. But when you are pressuring any quarterback, they're going to perform worse. So pressures do matter. Hashtag sports saying pressures absolutely matter. And Jerry Hughes is still getting those. The Bills had the number 1 pass defense in the NFL, according to DVOA, which accounts for all those crappy quarterbacks they played and all the bad teams they played. Part
Plus
of that was
the raw stats of yards and points and all the other things. All those they had the raw stats and the metrics.
Correct. And part of that is pass rush. So I'm torn here. I think it's either Mario Addison or Jerry Hughes at a team friendly, hopefully maybe $4 million a year deal, maybe a 1 year deal from either one of those guys. My gut tells me Addison's done maybe in the league, or moves on to somewhere to go get a little bit of a bigger deal maybe. And that Jerry Hughes' ties are so thick here, and the relationship with the coaching staff and what he wants to, win a title with this Buffalo Bills team. He has unfinished business here. I think he's the one that's probably more likely to be back. But if it's not Jerry Hughes, it's somebody in that ballpark anyway, and that same type of production. But I do keep, the more I scour through that scratch and dent thrift section of the defensive ends, I keep coming back to Jerry, even at 33 years old, was playing at a productive level. So for me, he's a guy I definitely would welcome back. And I think maybe you let Mario Addison walk. And then Efe Obada, he's another one that, I don't know, he's probably that type of production is easily replaceable either with a draft pick. One of the guys you have, maybe a Carlos Basham, up and coming, a Shaq Lawson, who we had heard was signing with the Bills and then maybe didn't, and maybe he's out there and has interest. Easily replaceable, but I would welcome back Efe Obada if, again, musical chair shakeout where, okay, you don't end up with Shaq Lawson, you just bring back an Obada. But that bottom tier guys, if it's not Obada, then I don't know, somebody else in that same range, but I'd welcome them back.
So this question leads into one of the comments I was going to make. Mario asking about, if he's brought back, would Jerry's snap count drop below 50%? I do believe they would, because I think what everyone is envisioning is this free agent splurge. Brandon Beane spent those picks on AJ Epinesa, Gregory Rousseau, and Carlos Basham for a reason. That reason was the 2022 football season.
Right.
That reason was he knew these contracts were coming up, and here's where it was. Now, those are only 3 players. You still need another player or two in that rotation to be able to get there, especially the way Basham can kick inside and play pass rush 3-tech to be able to be a part of that.
And Epinesa hasn't quite proven he can hold that, position.
But they are going to bank on those 3 developing more than fans like.
Yeah,
that is
the Dawson knock.
Part
it's
of
your
their
hope is not a plan. They are actually doing it.
Yes, the same thing with Harrison Phillips, the same thing with Dawson Knox. They are just going to bank on the fact of, hey, we need you to step up and we need you to show it.
Right.
And it's going to make fans uncomfortable because we haven't seen it for a sustained level. But pass rush is hard in the NFL. A lot of rookies flash for moments, and it takes years to get to that point to where you're consistently making that impact. I get it that it's going to be uncomfortable, but a big part of the plan is, hey, we need those 3 young guys to take another step forward, a big step forward, and to look better. And then it's going to be a piece like Efe Obada, a cheap rotational piece that can do that, and then 1 veteran pass rush specialist. So I'm open to it being Jerry Hughes. I'm probably ready for, I think Mario Addison at 35 is asking a lot to be able to continue to do that, although he did have 7 sacks last year. So he obviously showed he's capable of being able to still produce. Like 7 sacks and the pressures that he had were, I think, in the low 40s. So he still was, putting up some legitimate numbers. But I am curious where that sits. If Jerry is cheap, he's been here a long time. He's still productive. I get the idea that people want a new name, but honestly, if you go get Justin Houston, it's just a different name. He's the same guy. He's just like Jerry Hughes. He's just a different guy. Who are some names you would look at if we decided to go outside and we end up not bringing back Jerry Hughes or Mario Addison? And again, for everybody to listen, of course, Aaron and I would love if we went and traded for Daniil Hunter or Khalil Mack or found some awesome pass rusher to bring in. That would be great. It would be awesome if we signed Chandler Jones. They're not going to do that. It's just not how it's going to work. That's not how this money is
going to be a splurge. I would be happy for it to be along the defensive line edge. Like if you're going to make a trade, if you're going to move on from a first round pick, go get a pass rusher.
Dumb enough to trade another foundational player like they did Stephon Diggs, and they're going to trade Daniil Hunter, by all means, I'll figure out how to make that work and to fit in an awesome pass rusher like that. I just don't.
If Chicago wants to eat a ton of Khalil Mack's money,
if New Orleans has to get off of Cam Jordan's money, whatever it is, if somebody does that, by all means, let's jump in and do that.
But for the sake of this conversation,
for guys in the Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison price range, who are guys you like?
Yeah, well, so I know a lot of fans have talked about Emmanuel Ogbah. He's in that upper
projected
tier,
10 million plus everywhere I've seen.
again, guys, like I think if you go look it up, he's got that 11 sacks I think he had. But outside of those sacks, like Jerry Hughes had a better PRP, which is all combined pressures according to PFF. He had a better pressure rating, better win rate. Like he's still up in that upper echelon. He's older, so you're not going to get you'll get one of these younger guys for more prime years. But he's still that type of productive pass rusher. But another guy would be, I think will probably get more money than I'd like, but a Melvin Ingram on a 1-year deal where same thing, like he was chasing a ring. He got traded to the Chiefs, going for a ring. Maybe hey, same type of thing you've been saying. Hey, if the musical chairs fall in free agency and you haven't found a home and we're a place to come win a ring, like, hey, we're happy to give you that Jerry Hughes money over here for $4 million for whatever the next year or two. So I would do a Melvin Ingram. A couple guys that I think should probably get a little bit lower than that Jerry Hughes money, but you never know how free agency works. Jacob Martin from Houston Texans is a guy, and Lorenzo Carter from the New York Giants is a guy that Eric's got some film waiting for me. I've just been kind of pinpointing some types of targets before I really look into watching them. But Lorenzo Carter, what interests me about both Martin and Carter, Martin's a pass rush specialist from the Texans.
Both of them are rotational snap guys. Both of them are 26 years old. Lorenzo Carter's 6'5", coming off the edge, and he's played with his hand. He's an outside linebacker. I like him coming out of Georgia.
Yeah, and he's outside linebacker more for the Giants, so he plays upright quite a bit, but he's put his hand in the dirt a little bit, and so I'm excited to watch his tape. But some of these younger guys like that, even another guy that I want to get more eyes on is Carl Granderson, former Josh Allen teammate. Yeah. We saw him sack Josh Allen this year, but another guy with size, 6'5", 25 years old. Like these are some guys that I'd be happy to try to get in the door and see if you can add into what you already have with Epinesa and Basham and see if you can get some of the, unseen development that they haven't had in their career and really, take them to the next level here and add to a nice young pass rush.
Yeah. And I know a lot of guys in the chat are talking about that. That's the big piece that they need. We need that legit pass rusher. You guys are right. It needs to be Gregory Rousseau.
Yeah.
You're right. We need a legitimate, impactful pass rusher. That's why they spent a first-round pick on Gregory Rousseau. That's the kind of guy. And I'll add a couple names. You mentioned Shaq Lawson earlier. I think that's absolutely the kind of guy that we could see brought back in here. Justin Houston, I mentioned his name. Justin Houston absolutely would make sense. If Melvin Ingram doesn't get the big, a little bit of a raise or a little bit more money, he's kicked around the last couple of years. He's in the same age as Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison. I'd absolutely bring Melvin Ingram in for a year. I think those are pieces that would all make sense. But I think Melvin Ingram, Justin Houston, Jacob Martin, Lorenzo Carter are all names for guys to keep track of if we don't bring back Jerry Hughes. And again, the end Shaq Lawson is there, Carl Granderson. The answer needs to be the guys they've drafted. That's why you build it that way. You guys can get mad all you want. The Bills are not signing a splurge pass rusher. They're not. I'm trying to brace you guys for it now.
I'm trying to jinx us.
It's not.
They're not going to do it.
I would love to be wrong. It would be awesome. They're not going to. Yeah. They're not signing a big time pass rusher. They're not.
And one thing I want to also talk to fans and all of us about is that this Bills defense is not broken. I think we're looking at the last game that the Bills played, which was not a good game against the Kansas City Chiefs, where they scored a lot of points. They gave up that huge drive at the end of the game. But this defense wasn't broken. And so, again, the sign behind me has run it back. And I'm not kidding. Like, okay, it doesn't need to be Jerry Hughes, but a guy that's at that level will be good enough to give you a top 5 defense in the NFL. This will get you back to being a contending team in the Super Bowl, or that is contending for a Super Bowl. Like this team isn't broken. I think that fans took that final loss a little bit overly emotional in that this defense is terrible. We need to find something to get over the hump. Like, I don't know that it's any one thing to get over the hump. The coaching really lost that game more so than the players did necessarily. And so they'll add players through the draft. They'll add some players here through free agency, but I don't think it needs to be some big, huge splash to get this team over the hump. This was one of the best teams in football already.
Yes. Yeah, except we talked at the beginning of the show, how many of the smartest football people we know said, hey, I know the Rams won. The Bills were still the best team in football this year. It's just kind of the way it works. Tough luck.
Yeah. So you're filling some holes, and maybe it's not the same guys, but if you're kind of maintaining the level, that's not bad. If you're maintaining the floor of this Bills team a year ago, then you're doing a good job.
Yeah. Here's another one. Eric and I spent a good amount of time today talking about some of the names here, and some of it was a little frustrating because we can't afford some of the guys that we want. One of the next spots where we see a lot of free agency movement is a defensive tackle. The three guys that are leaving are Vernon Butler, Harrison Phillips, Justin Zimmer. So we have choices to re-sign those guys. We then also have the situation where right now there's a very iffy future on Star Latuele. We don't know if he wants to come back. We don't know if the team wants him to come back. But there's not a lot of cap savings there. We talked about it here. We can do a post June 1st designation and maybe free up $4.5 million to be able to make a little bit of room, but there's not a ton of room there. So first, let's get one out of the way, and we'll go in reverse order. Vernon Butler, best of luck. We wish you well in your future endeavors. I wouldn't even invite him back for a camp invite.
Yeah, this is a frustrating position because this has been one of Brandon Beane's tougher positions in free agency, right? Like, I've been a defender of Star. I think Star was better in his first year than people gave him credit for. It wasn't a stat
had
sheet
flashes
guy.
this year,
had some flashes this year, but the
no
contract,
matter how you slice it, it's Brandon Beane's worst contract.
It's the worst contract. COVID didn't help, which Brandon Beane couldn't have foreseen that obviously happening. We could already be out of this contract going into this year, which would have been much nicer than dealing with the problems that we could potentially have here. But then Vernon Butler and keeping him over Quentin Jefferson, and the experiment totally failing for them with Vernon Butler and him not even being a game day active. And when he was not a benefit to the team. And so, yeah, I'm happy to see him leave. I hate to say that. I hate to talk about a player that way, but Brandon Beane in free agency, we need to see better results out of this pro scouting department of Brandon Beane with the contracts that they're handing out to some of these guys at this position, because it's important. They got to get this right. We talk a lot about Tremaine Edmonds at Cover One, and everyone thinks we're Tremaine Edmonds stands, and that's not true. Like, I like the guy and I think he's a good player, but we won't have a true evaluation on him unless they get this position right. Like, if they keep putting patchwork together and it's guys that can't hold up blocks and things like that, like, they have to get some guys in here that can do their jobs at the interior defensive line to see if Tremaine Edmonds is the guy you want to invest in the future, and to help. You know, we saw Ed Oliver start to come on towards the end of the year. Like, this also helps him. So, thanks for nothing, Vernon Butler, but good luck elsewhere. I'm glad you made a bunch of money here.
Yeah. The other one is Justin Zimmer is basically in the same boat as Ike Bottker. I think we do give him a contract to come back. I don't know when he's going to be ready. We don't know the extent of the injury, how that's going to work. He's also sneaky 29. You know, I know he kind of came on the scene late and had floated around the league. So a sneaky 29, he's not some up and coming young guy. But I think Zimmer is brought back, which brings us to the difficult conversation. Harrison Phillips. Harrison Phillips started out solid and then really picked it up as the year went and had a very strong finish to the year, probably a strong last 3 quarters of the season. Looked really solid. Took the starting role from Star Latuele, never gave it back, and became at one point he and Ed Oliver were playing 60-70% of snaps in some of those playoff games, really making a big impact. He is also aware of this conversation we're having tonight. He and his representation aren't dumb. They know that Vernon Butler's leaving, Justin Zimmer's injured, that we don't know the future of Star Latuele. They know they have some leverage. The Bills need him or need to pay through the nose to be able to replace him. Let me give you guys a couple numbers. Last year, contracts that got given out at defensive tackle: Delvin Tomlinson got $10 million, Shelby Harris $9 million, and Ndamukong Suh $9 million, Michael Brockers $8 million, Roy Robertson Harris $7.8, Devon Godchow $7.5, Larry Ogunjobi $6 million, Poona Ford $6 million, Malcolm Brown $5.5, Sheldon Rankins $5.5, Jerron Reed $5.5, Malik Collins $5 million. That's 11 guys that got between $5 and $9 million. And, don't get me wrong, there's a couple bigger names on that list. An awful lot of those guys aren't better than Harrison Phillips, or certainly aren't way better. I would love to have Harrison Phillips back. I'm nervous what the number is going to be. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I think he's got some leverage for sure. I think it's also similar to Rick Bates in that it's not a huge body of work for him, right? Like, he had the injury, he came back from the injury, it took some time. Towards the second half of that season, he really came on. So he still doesn't have a full season's body of work where he's going to be, I don't think one of those 10 million, $7
No,
million guys. I think he's closer to that $5 million a year range type of guy. And for me, at that price, he's a priority. I think he's number one priority on this list of pending free agents. And a lot of the reason is because of the process, right? Like he is the kind of guy that every time Sean McDermott gets up and talks about what they try to build inside that building, Harrison Phillips is the guy. He's your Walter Payton Man of the Year guy 2 years in a row. He does everything right in the community. He does everything right in the locker room. He's a leader on this team already. He's a vocal guy.
Came back from injury.
He's a guy you drafted and developed. Like those things matter to the rest of the locker room, to the guys that you're bringing in future drafts, that, hey, if you play and you do things the right way, we're going to reward you. And that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have talked about that. So to me, this is a culture process signing as much as it is a need on field. So the leverage is definitely there for his camp. But I also do think, and this sounds really homerish, and I don't think this way of most free agents. I think most people are out to get as much money as they want. I think Harrison Phillips knows his values here, and he wants to be here with Sean McDermott, with this team. I think he knows he's a good fit here, both cultural fit and with this team. And I think he sees the special opportunity he has with Ed Oliver and what they can do and be the future of this defensive line. So while they have leverage, I think he goes to his agents and says, hey, play that leverage card. But Buffalo is where I think we need to be and where I want to be. So I think he takes a little bit less, maybe not a lot, but a little bit less. And I think he's in that lower end of the ranges that you were talking about.
Yeah, I started this offseason thinking he was going to be closer to $4 million a year, and I had it at like 3 years, $12 million. I've now come around that I think it could be 5.5, even $6 million. And I think Mario actually was in here, and the guys at hashtag threw out a pretty good number. I think that the way they reward him isn't in the average annual value. It's that they give him a little more length, and they give him a little bit longer deal, a little bit more guaranteed, show him that, hey, you're the kind of guy that we're not worried about. You already had the worst case scenario happen. You blew out your ACL and you came back stronger than you were before. You know, speed and agility is not his game per se, although he does have awesome pursuit from a defensive tackle guy. So I think that's about right. I could see 3 years, 15 to 16.5 million. 4 years, 22 million sounds about right. $5.5 million is about right. And that 22 4-year deal would let them reduce it in the first year. That would let them space it out a little bit, maybe
give them a nice bonus, signing bonus.
No, I think again, they're spot on in the way that they'll go about it. You can front load that a little bit with a bonus that bumps some of the numbers back. All of a sudden, maybe he's $2.5 or $3 million on the cap this year. And then, get to those other numbers later as the cap goes up and they'll be okay. So I think that's a safe number. And I do think it is a priority. We're going to list a couple other names that I would love to still go after. But we'll go through here, and Brandon mentioning how handsome Harrison Phillips is.
He's a handsome guy.
Yeah, no, he said he looks like me. So the idea that we can go through there. If we don't, and I don't think some of these names we mentioned, because we're going to mention some one tech type of guys, are guys I would love and that I would really like to have. I don't think they go through and re-sign Harrison Phillips and add one of these guys. I kind of think it would be one or the other. But if
I think they might have to.
Well, so let me finish this thought.
Yeah.
If they do what I said and they do a longer term deal and they can really shrink the first year cap number, maybe they can add one of these other guys, and then they don't have to push for a defensive tackle in the first round. There's two names that you put out there that Eric and I were talking about, the exact two names today. Who are some of the guys you would like here at defensive tackle?
Yeah. So in the dream scenario where we're swinging for the fence, I love Akeem Hicks. I just have to say his name because I've been a huge fan of him for a long time. And I don't know if he's at the point in his career where he would take a deal to win a title. He's been stuck in
Chicago for so long. Come win.
I know. Come win a title with us. That would be fantastic. I think that's a pipe dream for me. But I had to get it out.
I don't think it's crazy.
We'll see. I wouldn't be mad at it. Linval Joseph is a guy that is the big, wide, girthy kind of guy that you like. You love those guys. And he's a guy that I would have liked to have had here a couple times now. And I think he's going to be 34 next year. He's 33 right now. 6'4", 329 pounds, big body. I think he's the exact kind of stature of a guy to keep a Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano clean. He's not going to be sexy. He's just going to clog the middle and get guys off of your linebackers, which I think what the Bills need. So he would be a guy that I would love to have. I would love to find a way to bring back Harrison and get him and still draft. I think as much as you can load this interior defensive line up, the better. Because I do think also he's a guy that you want to put on a rotation, just like a Jerry Hughes type of guy, because he's going to hit that 34-year-old window here, and you don't want him to have to be playing a ton of snaps.
And rookie defensive tackles is one of the hardest spots to come in and impact the league immediately. So there's some you have to be smart. Even if we do take one, maybe not a first-round pick, you would plan to play a decent amount, but a second or third-round pick, there's no guarantee they're ready to contribute right off the bat.
Absolutely. Danny Shelton's a guy that I like the idea of, but he's
probably
fallen off
plan,
the last couple of years. Yep. But still that big body that maybe you can get him real cheap and get a big body in here. I know you're a big fan of Tim Settle, only 24 years old.
Intriguing, and I know like his stats and his film will show that he's even though he's 320 pounds, more of a pass rusher than a run blocker. I wonder, there are so many first-round picks on the defensive line. I wonder how much that's the role they kind of give to him versus could he do more? But when you have so many other stud defensive linemen, I wonder if he just didn't get the reps for it. So if it was cheap, there's something that intrigues me. He's so young and has shown flashes that it would be there, but I wouldn't spend a lot of money on it.
Yeah, and then I think he'll be out of the price range, but Derek Nandi from KC is a guy that if there's not a lot of market value out there, that I would love to get a big body like his. But I think he'll be above their price range after they sign Harrison. I think a Linval Joseph is a more realistic, but if Nandi was around, I would like to get a guy like that too.
I have a feel some of those names are coming up in the next film room, so make sure you guys are checking out the work that Kendall and Anthony and Eric are doing in the film room. Out of that group, Linval Joseph, Akeem Hicks is awesome. He's literally a grizzly bear in a football jersey. Linval Joseph is a guy that I joke, he's kind of like the modern Larry Allen, where other freakishly large, freakishly strong professional athletes talk about Linval Joseph like, no, you guys don't understand. He's different, strong. Like, multiple guys have put out that Linval Joseph is the strongest guy in the NFL, and there's no discussion. Like, he is just freakishly strong and can just throw around other professional athletes in a way that other people can't. And he's not, although he did have a little bit of pass rush impact by pushing the pocket here. He would allow Ed Oliver to do so many things, and you would be able to have a impactful player on the field for every snap that you wanted if you found a way to fit Harrison Phillips and Linval Joseph. And if you could do the two of them for $8 or $9 million in cap space this year, there's ways you could frame that to be able to fit the two of them. And then you've really opened things up from a draft standpoint. You wouldn't have to reach. You wouldn't have to do anything else. You'd be really set. You could use all the 3-tech pass rush snaps, could be defensive end guys like Obata and Basham kicking in inside to be able to pass rush. It would really open up a ton to let you do that. So,
and you could still take interior defensive, like it would open it up to where, hey, if Jones is there, whoever's on the board, like, go for it. You take those guys because you have gotten all the holes filled, which is exactly what Brandon Beane wants to do.
So we'll see where that goes. But I wonder, depending on how the contract is set up, if they can afford to do Harrison Phillips and another guy, or if it's Harrison Phillips or another guy. We'll see where that goes.
You said we had coupons.
We do. That's an area you could play with if we wanted to do more so there. We are going to spend $5 to $6 million on a defensive tackle. I'm not sure who, and I'm not sure how many. We are going to spend a chunk of money on a defensive tackle. I hope it's Harrison Phillips and one more ring chasing veteran that I would be really exciting to get. Maybe it's Akeem Hicks. We'll see. Two more spots we have left here. We'll do wide receiver first. We already talked about Jake Kummerow with the special teamers because that's really what I consider him. We've got Emmanuel Sanders. I think it kind of looked like the clock had ticked midnight on Emmanuel by the end of the year. Yeah. I don't know that I'd be furious if he came back on a cheap deal, but I'm probably ready to look elsewhere.
Yeah, I think we talked about it off air a little bit and a little bit when we were talking about some of the other positions, running back, wide receivers so deep in this class. And really, I think in every class in the future, wide receivers are just going to continue to be deep in this league that you can get a guy in here. And I think that there's enough guys in free agency that you could find a younger
and every
guy.
time I look at Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Jameson Williams and all these guys in the draft, I'm like, ooh, they look fun.
Yeah, there's a bunch of fun guys in the draft. There's a good amount of fun scratch and dent level guys in free agency where I think that you can kind of be past this. I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to retire anyway. He had that mid-season where he's like, oh, if we win a ring, I'm out. I'm going to be at the beach. He's like, I think in his mind, that was that chance.
This was the run.
That was the run. He really has nothing to prove. He has a ring. So it's not like he's chasing that one. He was just looking for one other one for his other hand. So I think he is going to retire anyway.
I agree.
Make that easy for the Bills that where they don't even have to make that question. But yeah, I think he's gone. He's moving on.
How about Isaiah McKenzie?
This is tough for me because I don't care.
I really struggle to put a market on him.
Yeah.
I struggle.
Yeah, I don't know where his market is. I think it's lower than Bills fans think.
And this is obviously after we signed Devontae Adams and trade for Calvin Ridley.
Correct. All the guys.
After those things.
All the things. Yeah. So we have the best, the greatest wide receiving room in the history of football. No, I don't know that I like I like Isaiah McKenzie just fine. He is going to be 27 years old this next season. I think
another kind of like Justin Zimmer, sneaky older.
People think he's younger than he is. He, to me, a little bit is a one-trick pony. He's got speed, which I know everyone says we need more speed, but we heard a lot of people saying he could be our Debo. He could be our Tyreek Hill. He's not a shifty necessarily guy. He's not making guys miss. He's not a huge yards after catch dude. His route running isn't fantastic. That game against the Patriots was a real weird one where people said, oh, see, finally he got an opportunity and look what he did. And that was more to me what Bill Belichick did and leaving Miles Bryant. Yeah, stubbornness, leaving Miles Bryant on him and totally exposed him. If you could get that matchup 15 weeks out of the year, I'd love to have my Isaiah McKenzie here and playing man against an unathletic corner. You're not going to get those matchups. So I don't know how much he doesn't provide. I don't think any of the confidence in the return game anymore to come back in that capacity. I think they're going to move on and try to find somebody there. So he loses a lot of leverage and value here in Buffalo, in my opinion. And I just think there's another guys that can replace him and be outside wide receivers and slot wide receivers and provide some special teams ability that you could probably bring back for around what he would want to come back for. So to me, I think he's a let him walk, even though he's a fan favorite. I know people think I'm always hating on Isaiah McKenzie, but I don't think his value is there where he's any type of priority to bring back. If the dust settles in free agency again, like it did last year, and he's got no offers out there and he's not going anywhere, sure, bring him back on a super cheap deal, but I say let him walk.
So with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, obviously we're in pretty good shape. As of right now, everything we know of is that we're assuming we keep Cole Beasley and that maybe it's with a pay cut, but he can still be the zone slot guy and he's under contract guy in the slot there. He's under contract, so we're not talking about him tonight because he's under contract. We have Marcus Stevenson under contract and on a cheap rookie deal. We have Isaiah Hodgins back again on a futures deal. I think we draft another guy. And then I've got
at 25.
Honestly,
if we fill all these holes,
I don't think it's crazy. I think it's on the table. I think that there are a couple of positions that we're not taking. We're not taking a quarterback. We're not taking an offensive tackle. There's a couple of positions that we're not taking.
Right.
We're not taking a linebacker, but I think wide receivers on the list. It's one that you could justify. So going that route, I have like a $2 to $3 million offer dangling out there. Sure. And I know you mentioned a couple guys. Eric likes Byron Pringle a lot, and I've seen his name floating around. Well, I like Deontay Harris out of New Orleans. He's the guy that I like that,
I've heard you say that.
If he doesn't he's a really good returner. He's a really good returner. And then this year had like 35 catches for 560 yards. So he's a functional, he would be that guy that would be the ideal fourth receiver where he's your primary returner. And when you want to go 4 wide and have a deep threat, he can be that guy.
Yeah.
But you have that there, and I'm fine paying that a couple $1 million. Not a lot of money, a little bit of money. And obviously we showed Micah Hyde wasn't back there in the playoffs for no reason. We don't have the
You
primary
don't want it,
returner on the roster right now.
A bunch of the beat guys, when that was happening, kept being like, "You can't do this. I don't want to see this." Like, yeah, none of us do. The coaches didn't want to see Micah Hyde back there either. It was
He's the only guy we could trust.
It was in case of emergency, and that was an emergency. Like there was just really bad ball handling, decision making happening in that part.
I just don't know how. I don't know that McKenzie can recover from that, and if he can't be a return guy, I don't think he's versatile enough on offense or dangerous enough on offense that it's a priority. So I would welcome him back. I'd be happy if he came back. And if we gave him 2 years, $4 million, and he got $2 million a year, by all means, I'd welcome him back, and he can be our jet sweep gadgety guy. And if we have another coach that's stubborn enough to go man coverage all day, we'll burn that guy too. But I just don't see it being anything there. Were there any other names outside of there that you looked at in that range of receiver?
If we can trick Cordell Patterson to come into play for chicken wings,
be the kick returner, the pass down running back, and our extra receiver.
Unfortunately, I wanted it last year. I think that would have been their opportunity to get that under a few-year deal. I think that ship has sailed.
Someone's going to pay him too much money.
Yeah, someone's going to pay him too much money. That ship sailed. Unfortunately, but that'd be the kind of guy I'd be looking for. But a couple of guys that I like that I've down here, Russell Gage, 26 years old, played for the Falcons, sneaky. I think that he could come in here and do all right. I agree with all the guys on the film room the other night. Byron Pringle would be an ideal fourth wide receiver. I think a guy that has proven production, can play inside, outside, can play special teams. That's exactly what you want at that position. Josh Reynolds, another guy, 27 years old, 6'3", 4.52 speed. Like not a huge, crazy athlete, but good enough, I think, to do some stuff. But at this point, you're looking for a fourth wide receiver. So if it's one of those types of guys, or again, pick 25 or later round pick, I think that you can get a day two, your next Gabe Davis, in this coming up draft, and have him slowly come along and be a part of the special teams, and slowly come along and be inserted into the offense slowly. I'd be fine with that too. But I'm not interested in overpaying for that fourth wide receiver option. And I think we have to be realistic of who Isaiah McKenzie is and what this team is looking for. And there's only one ball that can go around, and I want to get that ball to Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox, Gabe Davis, and if it's Cole Beasley in the slot, Cole Beasley too.
Yeah, I know Twitter is fun to talk about Juju Smith-Schuster and Christian Kirk and Chris Godwin.
Those guys are all going to get paid.
Michael Gallup and even Braxton Berrios. Those guys are going to get more money than we're going to pay our third or fourth receiver.
I'm not high on Berrios, man. I don't see it. A lot of people see it.
Connor Rogers wasn't when we had him on either.
What's that?
Connor wasn't when we had him on either.
Yeah, he was like, he's an average slot receiver guy. Like, he's not anything special. Yeah, I just don't see it. I think a lot of people are seeing the short hat or lunch pail white guy and thinking Wes Welker or Cole Beasley like 2.0, and I don't see it. I think he needs a lot of refinement. And Kendall said it best on the film room show, like, you don't pay a guy to develop. You draft a guy to develop. So, and then you get him on control cost. You don't pay a guy, bring him in as a free agent, then to develop him. And I think that's what Berrios is right now.
One other guy I'll throw out there, Dallas is in a little bit of trouble, and I think they spend their money on Michael Gallup that maybe Cedric Wilson gets out. Sure. I'd put him in that Byron Pringle, Deontay Harris bucket, Russell Gage of, hey, they could come in and, you can pitch them that, hey, we don't think Cole Beasley is going to be here a long time. There's going to be more targets available in the future. Here's why you should sign a 2 or 3 year deal. We could do that kind of thing where I could see it from that standpoint. But I agree. I think that makes sense. So right now our assumption is Emmanuel
needs
Sanders
to develop.
Retires. Yeah, Hodgins to be the big slot, the guy that we're going to need there, and whoever we get out of Garrett Wilson or Olave or Jameson Williams.
Olave, give me Olave, baby.
Oh God,
make it rain.
I would love to have a fun weapon like that there. So we'll talk about that as the draft comes up. The last guy that we have here is our man Levi Wallace.
Yeah,
I will let you speak about your dude.
Yeah, so I actually have been pounding the table lately for bringing Dante Jackson in free agency, because that was a guy that I fell in love with during that draft process. I think that he provides the athleticism that everyone's looking for. He's got that 4.3 speed.
4.35. Yeah.
I think when he ran at the combine, he was strained calf. too, if I remember correctly. He was injured at the point.
Trey would love to have another LSU guy.
LSU DB, the dude's a dog. He hasn't put up great numbers. He's had some injury problems in Carolina, but again, I'm really comfortable getting guys with injury problems into this building because I do believe in them
to come be their best self.
I believe in the strength and conditioning team. I believe in the facility that the Pagulas have built. I think that it is true. It's helping. They've had really, knock on wood, this team has had really great health and health management the last couple of years here. So I would sell that to any free agents with injury history. But Levi, man, I think Bills fans, he's an enigma among Bills fans because he is a really solid cornerback too.
Yes.
I don't think there's any debating that. I think he's an slightly above average cornerback to league wide. This year he got thrust into cornerback 1 and it didn't bite the Bills in the butt until you played a team like Kansas City in the playoffs. And that's not Levi Wallace's fault that he was cornerback 1 against Kansas City Chiefs in a playoff game. Nobody could have foreseen that happening. I don't know how many cornerback 2s can step into that role league wide. There might be a couple, but you look around the league and compare other cornerbacks 2s. If their number 1 guy goes down, it's similar to what type of production you're going to get out of a Levi Wallace. So I think that he's better than a lot of fans want to give him credit for. I don't think he gets picked on nearly as much as people want to talk about. I did a post the other day about, hey, what do you think the league average is on completion percentage? Because a lot of people talk about, he gets 60%.
It must be
around
20 or 30%.
People are picking on him because he's got 60%. And that league average, he's actually under league average of 62.8% completion percentage.
Guess who had almost the exact same catch percentage? Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen Ramsey, absolutely. And so, that's not an indication that a guy's getting picked on. He tackles well. There's a lot of things Levi does well. So I'd like to have Levi Wallace back. The spot track number, I think, has scared a lot of folks. I don't believe that. I think that's a myth. I don't think Levi is going to get that in free agency at all.
I know Levi's agent likes that number.
Yeah, I bet he does. Maybe there's some team that's crazy enough. The thing I think that benefits the Bills with Levi Wallace is he isn't an athletic guy. He isn't a great sized guy. I think he is scheme dependent. I think his best football
needs his own scheme.
Yeah, he's going to be in a scheme like this. So I think that it limits his options. So I think that when he goes into free agency, that maybe those options are a little bit limited for him and he can come back at a fine deal. I want a guy around $6 million price tag to be that cornerback. I think they need to bring in a vet. I know everyone wants to draft cornerback early and get more athletic at cornerback. Before you do that, you have to have free agency because it might not fall your way, right? There's a good chance that there's a run on corners in the first round before the Bills pick at 25 and you're ending up with the 5th, 6th best cornerback in the draft. And I don't know if I love that. So I want to make sure that there's at least a vet. I'm happy for it to be Levi Wallace and come back. Again, this Bills defense wasn't bad. It was the best pass DVOA defense. All the metrics showed that this was a good defense. And we didn't have Trey White from week 12 on. Did he get injured in week 12? Was it New Orleans game?
Yeah,
somewhere around there. And they're probably going to start the season without Trey White, considering how late that ACL injury was. So I want to return the floor. We talked about that a lot last year, at least maintaining the floor that you had. And Levi Wallace would do that. He would maintain the floor for you. So again, as much of a stand for Levi as I am, I'd like to bring him back. I don't need to have him back, but I think that would be totally fine to bring back and sort of, again, back to my sign, run it back with this defense. I'm totally happy to do that. Where are you at?
So I'll give you some names. I agree 100% on the price range. I think that we are in that $6 million price range for a veteran corner to be able to put out there. We know we have a little something in Dane Jackson, but we don't want Dane to be the starter if we can help it or not be on the patch before Trey White comes back. Levi was in this group. Levi Wallace, Sidney Jones, Dante Jackson, Rasul Douglas, Akello Witherspoon, maybe Trevarius Ward. Those are the kind of guys that I'm thinking.
Jason Verrett, maybe on the injuries, get bank on some.
He's probably more of a more discounted one that would come cheaper to get himself healthy. All those guys probably think they're going to get $8 to $10 million. And four out of the 6 of them are going to. They're going to get more than we think. And maybe one of them's Levi Wallace. But 1 or 2 of them are not going to get that. And we're going to say, hey, guys, We got 2 years, $12 million over here for one of you if you want to come get it. I would love if it's the athletic upside of a Sidney Jones, Dante Jackson, Rasul Douglas. I would love if one of those guys was the one that didn't get the deal, and that we could bring in that kind of size, range, and athleticism to be the guy opposite, where you have Dane Jackson as the safety net, Trey White is your number one, and then we let those guys flourish with Taron Johnson and Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer and Trey White around them.
And draft a rookie.
Yes.
Maybe the rookie develops and you don't need this guy.
Correct. So that's why I want a 2-year deal. I don't want something long-term.
Yeah.
So I kind of hope that we move on and that we do a guy with athletic upside like Douglas, Sidney Jones, or Dante Jackson. But I'm perfectly fine if it's Levi Wallace. If it is, like, I'm okay if we pay Levi Wallace the 2 years, $12 million. If somebody's going to pay him that, like, I'm a confident guy. I'm good at these contracts. I'm good at projecting what guys are going to get. I'm good at finding the comparisons. I can't find a single guy that's a $10 million cornerback that compares to Levi Wallace. I have no idea where they got that comp and how they set his market value at $9.7 million. I can't make heads of it, of how they got that number.
I don't get it.
His number in SpotTrack for all season was 5.4 million. It was 5.4 million the whole time. That number makes sense to me. That number checks out. I can find Kevin King signed a deal like that last year. Very similar, like similar athleticism, similar situations. Dante Jackson makes sense to be in that range.
Yeah.
Rasul Douglas had some big flashes with Green Bay, but also he was a street free agent for a reason and got claimed off the street for a reason. So a lot of those guys, there's incompletions in incomplete pockets in their history. There's a reason that they're going to be available like that. So I agree. I think that we pay that cornerback 2 area 2 years, 12 million-ish, about a $6 million deal. And I'm okay if it's Levi Wallace. I kind of hope that it's one of the athletic upside guys.
Like a Sidney Jones, this is a guy that for me, again, I think it comes back to what Kendall said about running back or about Berrios, where I don't know that I want to pay to get a guy to develop on that athletic upside. I'd almost rather draft an athletic guy and keep a Levi type.
I would say he put it together for Seattle last year. He played 730 snaps for them and had but that's the first time. It's the first time
he's done that, and
he's played any legit snaps.
I think maybe a little bit over aggressive for Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier type defense, where but uses that athleticism. Maybe you can rein that in a little bit. Maybe Sean McDermott feels like he can
in the system,
rein that in. But if I'm going to bank on athleticism, for me, I would want, and I may even overpay for it, for Dante Jackson, just because I think the fit is absolutely there, and I think that he would thrive in this defense. I think that's what Eric and I were gushing over him in that draft process, because I think you get him in a defense like this with that type of athleticism, with this type of coaching. I really think you can unlock the full potential there and keep him next to Trey for a long time. And you can still draft a guy to maybe be that next run of guys. But I'm all in on Dante Jackson ahead of Levi. But if you can't get him, I'm happy to bring Levi back and maintain that floor.
Yeah. So that does it for us tonight, guys. That, ran through. Aaron and I were silly and thought that this might be a short show because there were certain free agents, and we're now at an hour and a half.
We both like to talk too much.
Yeah, it's half the fun. So that kind of walked through all of our guys. So make sure you guys check out yesterday, so go back, listen to the salary cap spectacular. We went through every guy on the roster, how we can create cap space, what we can do. Tonight we went through every pending free agent, who we would bring back, what options we have, and some guys in a similar price range. Check out this the film room last night. They went through a lot of different guys at running back, receiver, and tight end. They're going to be going through other positions coming up here to show you guys, and make sure you're checking out all the guys across the roster. Anthony did a great show right before us. It's focusing on Gabe Davis. You have the roundup, you have the hoof, you have the air raid hour. We've got we're about to start a new weekly weeknight draft show. So you guys saw Rich Haynes worked with Anthony and I on the fantasy show. He's going to be setting up our man Russell Brown to be able to bring you all kinds of draft coverage all the way up through the draft. I think Thursday nights they're going to be going with the new draft show every night. So you guys are going to get a weeknight draft show for the first time from Cover One. All kinds of really good stuff coming. Make sure you're checking it all out. Aaron, where can the people find you besides our lovely show here?
Yeah, after my tweet earlier about Cole Beasley, you can't. I don't want anyone to
can't
find
find
me
me.
anymore. I just went and checked my mentions.
I
Okay.
retweeted it and then I
Yeah.
muted the conversation.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. No, you can find me here at Aaron Quinn 716, and here every single Wednesday, helping you guys get through the off season.
Absolutely. You guys can find me at Greg Tompsett, having fun, retweeting messages from guys that cover one and then muting the conversation so they can deal with the mentions. But you can find me having fun in the Cover One Slack channel, hanging out with all the good folks here. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.